Hello, welcome. My name is Miriam. I'm a family therapist, and today I've got with me Luke Brent-Savage. And Luke is the Director of Education, Child Protection. And Luke, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So Education Child Protection is a safeguarding company, and my main role is working with children. So I go into schools, both primary and secondary, and teach children how to stay safe online. So we talk about things they might do online, and we look at how they keep themselves safe. And then I also run sessions for both parents and professionals as well.
Mm-hmm. And lots of parents come to me and they're worried about the child's activity online, what they do, what they're exposed to. They don't know, should they be involved, should they not be involved? So maybe you can help a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things parents tell me all the time is staying up to date with what children do on the internet is one of the hardest things. And I always suggest the more that parents know, the better. So I always encourage parents to engage with their children and talk to them as much as possible, but also be realistic, because parents can't be completely up to date with what children do.
Yeah.
But the more conversations and communication between parent and child, I always think the better.
Tell us, what do children actually do online? I know that there's gaming and there's social media.
I could be here a long time. I mean, I often think with children, we talk about games, we talk about apps. So if I'm working with younger children in a primary school, for example, they'll talk about online games, things like Minecraft is quite popular over the years. Probably more popular today is a game called Roblox, which a lot of primary school children are playing. And we ask parents to consider, if their children are playing a game like Roblox or Minecraft, to think about who they're talking to, because on both of these games, children can chat to strangers. So Roblox, for example, has privacy settings in the same way Facebook would have privacy settings. So we ask parents check who their children can talk to. You get options like friends or everyone, which is millions and millions of people. And on Minecraft, you can turn the chat off, which I always think is useful for younger children as well. The other area of games that is very popular is computer games. So the biggest computer game in the world in the last 2 years has been Fortnite, which is very popular with children of all ages, despite the age rating being 12. I find a lot of younger children play that. And often the issues around gaming, again, is communication. So the conversations and chats that they might have via headsets with people they don't know.
Yeah, and I've actually created a video that's role play with a teenager about how to get this child off the screen, and I'm going to link to it here. But I was only dealing with one aspect of it, and that is limiting it, or making sure that the child takes, or the teenager takes part in home life. But there are many other sides to it as well.
I mean, limiting is something we recommend. So trying to set time limits and boundaries, because children like to play games, but if we just let them play as long as they want, I'm sure they'll play all night long. And we know that gaming addiction is a big problem. So I always think a good way of preventing addiction to computer games is having time limits and boundaries and trying to stick to it. And we understand it can be tough. There can be friction caused when a time limit maybe is expired, but I always think negotiation is a good thing. So have a conversation with the child about how long maybe it's a good time limit, and then try and stick to that. There is a new Fortnite out, by the way. It won't be the biggest game in the world for very long. The next one is called Apex Legends, and Apex is a really popular game at the minute. And it's very similar to Fortnite, but its PEGI rating is 16. The age rating is much higher, and it's a much more violent game. But any computer game a child's playing, we try and ask parents to have boundaries, rules, and stick to them as much as they possibly can.
Look, maybe you can explain to parents a little bit about the positive side of playing games, because sometimes we look at it as if it's a demon that we need to get out of our lives or control somehow, but actually there's a good side to it as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there certainly is. With a lot of games, if I go back to Minecraft, they're very creative, for example. So the games that often you see being played online, they are actually helping children in their creative aspect and their problem solving and logistical aspect as well. And often playing computer games, if we have children, for example, who might not be the best in certain social situations, it allows them opportunity to make friends. It's just making sure that the friends they're making are people we want our children to be making friends with. But having fun and enjoying themselves is certainly something that we would always encourage children to do. It's just trying to make sure we have boundaries around it.
And look, what happens with social media?
Well, it's a huge world. Often when I work with children, both in primary and secondary school, I tend to think there are sort of 7 or 8 apps that dominate at the minute. So in terms of social media sites, I would argue the big 2 would be Instagram and Snapchat. Not Facebook, because their mum's on Facebook and their nan's on Facebook, so that's not cool. But Instagram and Snapchat tend to dominate. Pictures and videos is what these apps are based on. But Snapchat is on the decline. Its popularity is actually falling away, and that started just over a year ago now. And Instagram is probably the most popular. They like to follow their favourite celebrities. You can do a live video on Instagram, it's called Instagram Live. And a lot of children actually chat, as in text, a lot of their friends on Instagram. It's called to DM, to direct message. So they communicate with a lot of their friends via that site. In terms of gaming and apps, there are apps all about computer games, which are really popular. So the big one in the last couple of years has been Twitch, which allows you to watch computer games being played live, which is really popular with children of all ages. And Discord is an app for gaming, but it's a chat app. So it's a bit like WhatsApp, for example, but specifically for gamers. But the big 2 social media sites still would be Instagram and Snapchat, with Twitter probably coming in third, I would argue.
And should a parent be worried if their child's on Instagram all the time?
I mean, addiction is certainly another issue around social media. There was a big BBC report this year about how social media companies are actually intentionally making their services addictive. So certainly that's something we ask parents to consider, and also the substitute for social interaction is a negative. So that idea of not going out and talking to your friends or seeing people, but using social media to communicate. And with virtual reality coming into more and more areas of social media, some of the big organisations are trying to make it even more a substitute for social interaction. So I'm not saying social media is terrible. There are lots of positives. In the opposite to that, it can help loneliness. If children maybe, again, socially struggle in certain situations, there are good ways of boosting your self-esteem through things around what you post, but it's certainly asking parents just to be aware of some of the negative impacts it can have.
Right. So look, how do we keep children safe online? What can we do?
Big question, and lots of different things to consider. I would always encourage, let's go back to gaming, making sure that the age rating is suitable for a child to be playing on a certain game. A lot of the big games, take Fortnite and Apex Legends, are free, which is good, that's a positive, but there's a lot of in-game purchases. So we always encourage parents to put passwords on their bank cards. On a lot of games you can turn the chat off. On Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, you can disable the chat. And again, trying to avoid addiction to gaming with time limits, I always think is really important. If a child is using apps, social media sites, first thing to always consider is privacy settings. So making sure the child's account is private. They're all slightly different, the privacy settings, but generally you'll see the word private or privacy in that sense. We would always want children not to share personal information. So avoid their profile picture being in their school uniform as an obvious example, or disclosing their age or the area in which they live. We would always encourage that parents try and be friends with a child. So if a child has an Instagram account, I always think it's a good thing for parents to follow their child. So they have an idea of the pictures and the videos that they're posting, and then the parent maybe potentially could see an image that they're not happy with and converse with the child and ask them to remove it, and always explain as to why. So following a child on social media, I think, is always a really good idea, and that helps the parent understand the app or the social media site as well themselves, which is always really good.
Until what age can you do that? Would you do this with a teenager too?
Yeah, it certainly becomes much harder the older they get, but I would always encourage it. Whether they're 8, they shouldn't be 8 because you're meant to be 13 to use social media, but we know that gets ignored. Whether they're 8, 13, 16, I would always encourage being a social media friend with the child. As they get older, they'll probably want that less and less, and then probably as they move into adulthood, it will come back to being more acceptable. But as much as possible, whether they're young or old, I always think that's a really good idea. There are lots of websites for parents to advise them about keeping children safe. So Internet Matters, I think, is a really good organisation. And on their website, they have how to set up parental controls on everything.
Great, and we're going to link to it in the description.
Internet Matters, that would be a good one. Another good one is called Parent Zone, and they publish a magazine called Digital Parenting. So it's aimed at parents with children of all different ages, and I think they publish their magazine maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and it really is useful. And the last thing is I will advertise my own website, and I've only just created it, but it's basically a website to help parents stay up to date, and it's called kidsonlineworld.com. Has, I think, 45 apps that children use, 30 or so games, and it gives advice about what's dangerous, what may be safety tips to consider. And then what we do is anytime anything comes up, we publish a newsletter or we tweet to say that this is something new. So the last one that went out a couple of weeks ago was about 2 of the really new popular apps around anonymous chat. Anonymous chat is a very scary part of the internet, and there are 2 really popular apps that have come up recently. So our latest publishment around what's new was around those 2 apps.
Right. Look, what about sexting and porn online?
Yeah, it's a huge issue that we encounter, not just with teenagers, with younger children as well. Children of all ages sending indecent images. Children tend not to use the term sexting. They tend to use the phrase sending nudes, and it's becoming more and more common. Sometimes it's in a relationship. It might be boyfriend-girlfriend. It might be pre-relationship, which is often the case with children. But even if it's during a relationship with a boyfriend-girlfriend, what happens when they split up? And then we have this big issue now of revenge porn, which is certainly something that's a crime in this country for the last 2 years, where that image or video is then shared after the relationship has finished. So it is placing a huge amount of trust in the recipient, and we ask children, if they do make a mistake, because children do, that they have an honest conversation with the recipient and ask them to delete it and to be able to prove that, so they know that that image can't be shared moving forward. We ask children to think about consequences, because you start saying to a child of any age, don't do this, don't do that, it tends not to go well. So we ask them to understand, if they were to ever send an inappropriate image, how vulnerable they can become to things like blackmail, to the image being shared amongst their friends, to an image being shared to a website, which is a big issue as well. So we would always encourage children to understand that there are dangerous consequences, but they also need to understand, if they're under 18, they're breaking the law. So they need to be clear around the legalities of it. It is a crime to send an indecent image as a child, because it's indecent images of children. So yeah, there are certainly things that children need to be probably reminded of, because they've probably been told this, but it needs to just be something that's always mentioned, and the issues and dangers around it. And the pornography side of things, as a country, we very nearly have got to the stage where pornography, you're not just going to be able to watch it online, you're going to have to verify your age. So we're still in the position today in August 2019 where you can do that, but now what we're being told is it's soon coming in where you're going to have to verify your age by obtaining a pass, which is a good thing for me, because the amount of children that watch pornography, hardcore pornography, is growing and growing, and it, for me, is distorting children's views on sex and relationships.
Completely.
Because children have to learn that pornography isn't real life, and that's not how sex and relationships actually look. and the issues around body image, both boys and girls, how they feel they should look and be presented. So there are big dangers with pornography, but as a country, they're trying to make an effort, the government, to make it less accessible for children.
And as the parent, the answer is in communication.
Always.
And not being shocked, because a lot of the times parents come to me and they're shocked because the child was watching something or was exposed to something. And when their initial response is of shock, the chances are that the child's not going to share very much with them again.
I would always encourage, wherever the topic about technology and the internet is, communication and education. So talking to them, open and honest conversations, keeping the dialogue as regular as possible, and educating children about dangers and issues and law and things like this. So education and communication are absolutely vital.
Luke, is there anything else you'd want to say to parents that we haven't covered so far?
I mean, I think the thing we haven't covered is the health aspect of using the internet and technology and devices in particular. In February this year, 2019, there was a big report from the UK Chief Medical Officer. And the two big areas that they focused on was if a child is on a device, a tablet, an Xbox, for more than 2 hours, how unhealthy that is for them. I think 2 hours is a long time, personally, but any more than that, how unhealthy it is. And the other thing they focused on was sleep, how important sleep is to child's health and development, and the biggest distraction is devices in the bedroom. So the health aspect is a really important consideration also.
It'd be good to leave all devices out of the bedroom.
I always think the least amount of devices in the bedroom, the better. Allow the bedroom for sleep and rest time, and devices maybe in the lounge or dining room, I always think is a good idea.
Maybe you can just have music on, but that's all. It's unrealistic to expect a child to have the device next to them and not to look at it.
I mean, as a human being, I'm the worst. I have my phone next to me in bed, and if I can't sleep, I'll look at my phone. I know that's not good. I know the lights in your eyes doesn't make you tired, but as an adult, I can get away with less sleep. But as a child who's got school the next day and the amount of sleep they need, it is really crucial. So particularly younger children, but teenagers as well, trying to avoid devices in the bedroom, I think, is a very good idea.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Luke. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you
here.
for your time.
If you like this content, please like, subscribe, enjoy your children, and see you next time.